Today we're going to talk about your morning check or your tool day check on the chainsaw. At first glance, you want to check the air cleaner. Most of our air cleaners are protected by a pre-wrap, which is the first line of defense against dirt and debris getting into the carburetor. If that is all dirty, you're going to want to pull that pre-wrap off, check the condition of it for cuts and splices. If it is dirty and it is in good condition, take it over to the sink and use dish soap and warm soapy water and clean it. Hang it out to dry, and then once it's all dried after a few hours, put it back on the air cleaner. You should never use compressed air on these K&N air cleaners, otherwise it's going to avoid the warranty. Next, we're going to move to the chain. All right, in order for this chain to work, this chainsaw to work, the chain has got to be on in the right direction. So, just for identification purposes, the bullet portion of the chain is actually the raker, and back towards the body of the saw, you've got the cutting surface, and that's a carbide tip. So, as the chain moves, as the saw is on and cutting, the chain is going to move away from the saw on the top, and it's going to return back to the body of the saw on the bottom. So you want to make sure the cutting surfaces are facing forward. Next, you want to check the tightness of the chain. Now, there's all kinds of theories on how tight the chain is, but the basic thing that I use, can you pull the chain a little bit away from the bar, and are you able to spin the chain on the bar? This saw motor has about 6 horsepower, which is plenty of power to move that chain in a very tight position. And once the chain heats up anyway through use, it's going to loosen up anyway on you. So it's good to have your chain in a good tight fashion. Now you want to check the condition of the chain. Per SOP, if 2 cutters in a row are damaged, or if 6 on the entire chain are damaged, the chain needs to be replaced. You're not going to get the maximum cutting efficiency out of it. So you remove that, send that to the shop for reworking, and put a new chain on. Now you want to make sure this saw has got plenty of gas and oil in it. The gas and oil that we use is Motomix right now, and that's pre-mixed. Any 2-cycle will have gas and oil in the mixture. We don't have to do any of the thinking on the mixture. It's all done for us. So the back container that he just had his hand on, that holds the fuel oil mix. And the front container there is the bar oil. Now make sure that when you tighten these down, you don't need pliers. All it has to do is be hand tight. All right, and if you're adding gas, then you make sure you add bar oil as well, because both are designed to go down at the same time. You don't want to fill up a chainsaw with gas and have an empty container of bar oil, and then what's going to happen is you're going to burn up your bar and possibly do damage to the motor unit. So make sure both are filled at the same time. Next, we're going to talk about starting the chainsaw. Fuel oil mixture that runs a saw can go through phase separation. So before you start anything, the first thing you want to do is to shake the saw, just to make sure if the saw has picked up any moisture, that's all mixed up inside there, and so you're running a clean mix of fuel and oil into the saw. Next, you want to make sure that your choke is all the way out. There's a choke on the right-hand side. These saws have a momentary kill switch in them, meaning that you don't have to set that at all. It should automatically be in the off position. When Travis is going to start this saw, he's going to put it down on the ground and put his foot right on the body of the saw and pull the pull start until he hears a pop. Okay, right away that saw went to pop. It had been running earlier. Next, being that he heard that pop, he's going to push the choke in. And automatically, pushing the choke in will set that saw to a high idle. So when Travis starts that, the chain will start spinning. What he's going to do is what we call goose the throttle. Just give the throttle a quick squeeze, and it will knock the high idle off onto regular idle. And since we're just checking the saw at this point, we're just going to let this thing idle for about 3 to 4 minutes, or until Travis puts his hand down next to the cooling fins around that cylinder that we see, and if he feels heat coming off of there, then you know the saw's warmed up. And now he can rev it up and do his checks while the saw is running. All right, we're going to talk about the chainsaw brake real quick. Just ahead of the forward handle is the chain brake. And what that is designed to do is to stop the motor from spinning the chain in the event that the saw kicks back. When you're warming up that saw, make sure the brake is off. To do so, all you have to do is squeeze that lever towards the handle. If you're running this saw in high idle and the brake is on, you're going to overheat your clutch and warp it. Just for shooting purposes, we're going to pretend like our firefighter has the saw running, and he's done his proper warm-up on that. So what he's going to do is he's going to squeeze the throttle and run the chainsaw in the ordinary cutting position, and then that's going to tell you if the throttle is responsive and everything's adjusted properly. Then he's going to hold the saw sideways on the left and sideways on the right, just to make sure that everything is adjusted properly and there's nothing wrong with any of the inner mechanisms that would tell you that you got to send this thing to the shop. Now, to make sure that your chainsaw is oiling properly, you want to throttle the chainsaw up and hold it near the concrete. And what that does is, if the chainsaw is oiling properly, it's going to throw oil on the concrete down ahead of you. And once you see that, then you know that the bars and chain are being lubricated properly. Next, we're going to go over flooding procedures. Every now and then you're going to flood a chainsaw, and you'll know that you've done this when the chainsaw doesn't start and you smell excess gas. What you want to do is then go into 2 people and get a partner over there and have one person hold the throttle wide open, which is going to open your butterflies in your carburetor, and while the other person steps on the handle and pulls the starting mechanism. Doing so is going to allow air to get into that carburetor and dry all that excess fuel out. If this doesn't work, and sometimes it's not going to if the saw is really flooded, then you need to go to more drastic measures, and this is going to take a little bit more time. What you want to do is pull your air cleaner off first. And each saw should have that scrunch tool sitting right there. And all it is just the turn of a screwdriver. Once they get that air cleaner off, now you're going to want to expose your spark plug. And that scrunch tool will have either an Allen head or a standard screwdriver for doing this, and then on the other end, that wrench will fit your spark plug. They're going to take the housing off right now, and they're going to expose the spark plug. Once they do that, they're going to have to pull the wire mechanism that's stuck onto the end of the spark plug, pull that off. Then they're going to remove the spark plug. Now, the choke is off right now, and the spark plug is out. So there's no way the chainsaw is going to start. What they're going to do is put your foot on the bottom frame of the chainsaw and pull the handle about 15 times. Doing so is going to dry any excess gas, and it's going to pull all that air through the carburetor and the cylinder, and it's going to dry that out. So now once they put that back together, put your spark plug in, your spark plug wire back on, and replace all your caps and air cleaners, then your saw should start. Right now, Tom is going to demonstrate the proper starting technique. Then he's going to go through the running chainsaw checks. And then he's going to show how to make a cut using the proper techniques of a chainsaw with the bullet chain. And to do so, you have to have a wide open throttle before you get into the cutting material. And keep the throttle wide open until you remove the blade from the cutting material. Okay, we've used our chainsaw at a fire. So now we're bringing it back to the station. I'm just going to show you a quick post-fire maintenance operation that we're going to do. First of all, before you do anything, you want to count the teeth in case you've damaged anything and you need to change that chain per SOP recommendations. So right now I want to clean underneath this clutch assembly, this brake assembly clutch cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thing apart and clean out all that debris that's around that clutch and oiler assembly. So I'm loosening the outside nuts to it, and then what makes it easier if I loosen the bar adjustment screw. Just take a couple turns on that, it makes things a little easier. Pull these brake assembly nuts off and set them aside. There are always two of them in any of the saws that we have. Pull this brake assembly off. We'll turn around. You can see a lot of the dirt and debris in here. So what I'm going to do is just clean that off. You can use compressed air in here. Squirt some orange 88 on there if you want. Normally I'd be cleaning more thoroughly than this, but this is for demonstration purposes. Now I'm going to pull my outside oiler plate off, noticing how it came on. You know, the bottom and top flange are bent to the outside. Next I'm going to take my chain off. Sometimes it's easier to count the damaged teeth when the chain is off.
Engine 2 Charlie 12, 1308 18th Street, trouble breathing. Engine 2 Charlie 12, 1308 18th Street, trouble breathing. Carry on 38.
Now I'm going to take the bar off, and I'm going to set it in a fashion so I remember which way was up. Alright? That side was up, and so I'm going to flip that bar before I put it down. Because right now, when you are using it, when you're into your cutting material, a lot of your wear is on the bottom side of the bar. So by flipping it, now I'm going to make the wear on this side. So you should always flip the bar on the fire department chainsaws, your own chainsaw. Just makes things wear more evenly. Next, I'm going to pull my inside oil plate off. I'm going to set that aside. Now this is a 670 series saw. This is a 20-year-old saw. These are really good saws. If it doesn't say what series you have on the outside stickers, you can always look on this identification plate right here and it'll tell you what series it is. 670s have 2 oiler plates. A lot of times these 2100 series saws, if you take off that clutch assembly, it has no outside oiler plate, but an inside oiler plate that's held on by a screw. You want to take that off when you're cleaning this saw in a post-fire maintenance. Pull that off and clean all the debris around there so the saw can oil properly. So right now, I'll spray this down with Orange 88. Brush all the debris. I can use compressed air. Get all that stuff cleaned out of here. What you really want to make sure of is where the oil from the oil reservoir comes out and lubricates the chain and the cutting bar. You want to make sure that's all clear debris. Now, another thing you want to look at is the clutch and the sprocket assembly. The clutch should spin and the sprocket should be in good condition. I'll compare a good sprocket with a bad sprocket. As these chain guides go around in circles and these motors will spin these chains at 13,000 RPMs, they definitely wear these sprockets. Okay, this is a brand new sprocket, this is a worn out sprocket. They got thin enough and broke. Now, this piece is only about $4 or $5, but it could ruin your whole saw use at a fire if you don't pay attention to it. So you want to make sure that your sprocket is in good condition. Now I'm going to put this thing back together. I'm going to put my inside oiler plate on first. And notice that has to fit around that bar adjustment guide. Okay, I made a little mark in the oil on how where the top of the bar was. So now I'm going to flip it. Now this becomes the top.
Charlie 263278 City View Drive, Severe Down Pain. 9 Charlie 263278 City View Drive, Severe Down Pain, and 33.
Now I'm going to replace the chain back over the sprocket here. And notice which way the cutting teeth go. The sprocket drives the chain, goes forward over the top and comes back towards the body of the saw underneath. Put that around the sprocket, loop it around the end of the bar. Put those guides into the bar, and then I hook that bar over the adjustment peg there. Sometimes easier said than done. Sometimes in order to hook that adjustment pin, you have to slide that back. Now it goes on. Now we're going to put our outside oiler on. Notice that slide there will allow that adjustment pin to move along there. Then I'm going to put my clutch cover, brake assembly on. Now what I'm going to do is just replace these nuts in a finger-tight fashion only. because you can see that the chain is definitely not tight enough. Now I always lift the end of the bar up because when you put it in the cutting material, it's going to do that anyway. Lift that up, it's going to create slack in that chain. Now, try to do this so you can see it. I'm going to tighten up on that adjustment screw. I'm going to do that until it's difficult to lift that chain off the bar. I like that position because you remember this is 6 horsepower pushing that around there. You know, it'll have plenty of power to get that around there, provided that the chain will slide on there. Tighten those nuts up. Make sure it spins, and it does. Now if I want, replace my scrunch tool there, fire this thing back up, make sure it's gassed up and oiled up, and it's ready to go.